The galaxy laughed at human legends. Then an endless armada appeared. They were laughing at us again. I sat in my assigned seat at the Grand Conclave, third row from the back, right where they always put the junior species. My name is Rael Vasquez. I am Earth's ambassador to the Elathari Union, a galactic alliance of over 400 spacefaring civilizations. Humanity has been a member for 90 years. In galactic terms, we are still toddlers stumbling around the playground, while the older kids watch and shake their heads. The conclave chamber was carved into the crystal heart of a dead star. Light bent through ancient mineral walls, and scattered rainbows across 1,000 alien faces. It was beautiful. It was also the place where I had been professionally humiliated more times than I could count. Today's topic was cultural threat mythologies. Every species, before it reaches the stars, imagines some great enemy waiting out in the dark. The Vithari, an insectoid civilization 60,000 years older than ours, were presenting their own ancient fear myths as an academic exercise. Their speaker, a tall creature with emerald wings and 3 sets of compound eyes, discussed how their ancestors once believed a great silence lived between stars and swallowed ships that traveled too far. The chamber murmured with polite interest. Then the Vithari speaker turned her attention to humanity. Our legends appeared on the conclave's display sphere. Ragnarok, the Book of Revelation, the Mayan apocalypse cycles, Hindu cosmic destruction, Greek titans rising from beneath the earth, Chinese myths of primordial chaos devouring order, Lovecraftian horrors sleeping in the deep. Image after image, story after story. The chamber began to ripple with laughter. Humans are the only species whose fear myths outnumber their gods, the Vithari speaker said, and her wings buzzed with amusement. They imagined 1,000 apocalypses before they even left their gravity well. It is charmingly neurotic, 400 species laughed. I sat still and kept my face calm. I had learned that skill early in this job. Smile, nod. Let them have their fun. Do not tell them the truth. Because none of them had ever asked the right question. None of them had ever wondered why every human culture, on every continent, separated by oceans and centuries, had dreamed of the same thing. A devouring swarm from beyond the edge, a final war at the border of creation, fire from the sky, the death of worlds, and always, always, the desperate instruction to remember. They thought we were afraid of the dark. They never considered that we might be afraid because we had already been in the dark and something had followed us out. The laughter was still fading when the alarm sounded. It was a sound most species in that chamber had never heard, a deep, resonant tone that vibrated through the crystal walls and silenced every voice. The conclave's ancient early warning system, a network of detection buoys strung along the galactic rim called the Shivering Web, had triggered a priority Omega alert. The last one had been 8,000 years ago, and it had been a false alarm. This one was not. The display sphere flickered and filled with telemetry data. A mass transit signature had been detected approaching from the intergalactic void, not from any known civilization, not from any mapped direction. The signature was so large that the sensors had initially classified it as a gravitational anomaly. Billions of individual drive signatures. A fleet stretching across 2 light-years of open space, decelerating toward our galaxy. The laughter stopped. I stared at the display, and something cold moved through my chest. Not surprise. Recognition. The shape of the incoming formation. The direction of approach. The absolute silence of it. No communication. No identification. Just an endless tide rolling toward us, like a wave with no shore to break against. I had seen this before. Not with my eyes. In my dreams. In the stories my grandmother told me when I was small. In the pages of every holy book and every myth I had ever read. I left the chamber while the elder species were still arguing about sensor calibration and returned to the human embassy. I opened a secure channel to Earth and sent a message I had been authorized to send only in the most extreme circumstances. Pull the vault files, category, ancestral memory. All of them. It is time. I need to explain something now. Something that no alien species has ever been told. In 2089, during early deep brain mapping experiments, human neuroscientists found something unexpected, buried in our DNA. Not junk code, not evolutionary noise. Encoded information, structured data hidden in the oldest layers of our genetic memory. Impressions so powerful that they had echoed forward through hundreds of millions of years of evolution and expressed themselves as myth, nightmare, religion, and story. Something had written a message into the biology of Earth's life, long before humans existed. Some intelligence, ancient beyond measure, had used the only storage medium that could survive geological time. Not stone, not metal, not digital code. Life itself, DNA. The one thing that copies itself endlessly and never stops. And when humanity finally evolved and developed language and culture, those encoded impressions surfaced. Every civilization on Earth, independently, described the same terrible memory. A swarm that devours. A serpent that encircles the world. A beast that rises from the deep. A war that ends all things. We had spent a century decoding those genetic memories in secret. The decoded data contained coordinates, formations, tactical patterns, weapon frequencies, countermeasures, all of it wrapped in the language of legend, because that was the only language evolution could carry. Our myths were not fantasies, they were an instruction manual, left by a dead civilization, written into our blood, so that we would never forget. I returned to the conclave 18 hours later. The Armada was now confirmed. 18 months from the galactic rim. Preliminary scans showed organic machine hybrid vessels, planet-sized carrier organisms, structures that bent light around themselves like wounds in space. The fleet did not answer hails. It simply came. The chamber was in chaos. Species were withdrawing. Alliances were fracturing. The conclave's combined military had no doctrine for an external threat, because no one had ever believed one existed. I walked to the central platform without asking permission. I activated the display sphere with my own credentials. I began to speak. I showed them the decoded ancestral memory. I showed them how the formations matched the incoming Armada's structure. I showed them how the approach corridors aligned with the paths described in Ragnarok. I showed them how the swarm clusters on their sensors corresponded to the locusts of Revelation. I showed them how the great encirclement pattern, beginning at the galaxy's edge, was the world serpent of Norse mythology, described 4,000 years ago by people who had never seen a star map. The chamber was silent. 400 species stared at me, and not one of them was laughing. "You mocked our stories," I said. "You called us paranoid children dreaming of monsters, but we were not dreaming, we were remembering. Something came to our world before we existed, and ended everything that lived there. And whatever intelligence existed before us loved its children enough to scar the warning into our blood so deeply that we spent 10,000 years of civilization screaming it at each other in every language we ever invented." I let that settle. You want to know why humans write 1,000 apocalypses? Because we survived one. And now, it is back. The Vithari speaker, the same one who had been laughing hours ago, leaned forward. Her wings were still. "What do you propose?" I told them. Since the discovery of the vault, Earth had not been idle. We had spent decades quietly building. Not the kind of fleet a junior species was supposed to have. Something much larger. Something hidden in the cold dark of the Oort cloud, constructed in secret, designed not from alien blueprints, but from the tactical geometries decoded from ancestral memory. We called it the Einherjar fleet, named for Odin's chosen warriors, ships built to fight an enemy that last came to our corner of the universe, 100 million years ago. We had also built the Fenris guns, orbital weapons platforms whose operating frequency was derived from a resonance pattern encoded in human myth as the sound that ends the world. We had the Kalki protocol, a network designed to broadcast all decoded data to every human colony and outpost if Earth should fall, so that the memory would never be lost again. And we had the Dreamers, specially trained humans who had undergone deep regression therapy to fully access ancestral memory. They did not just read the old warnings, they relived the last war. They knew how this enemy moved the way a body knows, to pull away from heat. They were our living tactical minds. The Vithari ambassador looked at me, with something I had never seen directed at a human before. It was not amusement. It was not pity. It was respect mixed with a deep and honest fear. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Since before we had words for it," I said. The Armada reached the galactic rim 3 months ahead of schedule. Advance elements poured through the gaps between stars. 3 frontier civilizations fell silent in days. Their signals simply stopped. The Conclave's combined military engaged the swarm and was scattered. Their weapons were designed for border disputes between known species. They had never faced something that fought like weather, like a tide, like gravity itself. The elder species had never known a true predator. They did not know how to stand against something that did not negotiate, did not threaten, did not even acknowledge their existence. It simply consumed. But humans knew. The einherjar fleet dropped out of hidden space along approach vectors that matched no known strategic doctrine, but aligned perfectly with paths described in human afterlife myths, as the roads walked by the honored dead. Our ships moved into formations that our ancestors had encoded in constellation stories and cave paintings. The dreamers, networked across the fleet, called out the enemy's movements before they happened. They had seen this dance 1,000 times in their sleep. We held the line at a colony evacuation point, using a formation the decoded memory called the Serpent's Coil Broken. The swarm's advance split, stumbled, and pulled back. It was the first time anything had made the Armada retreat. The galaxy watched, and the galaxy understood. This was not luck. This was not courage, though courage was part of it. This was inheritance. Humanity had been preparing for this moment since before our species had a name. I stood before the conclave one final time and told them the last secret. The deepest layer of the encoded memory was not tactical data. It was not weapon frequencies or fleet formations. It was a will, a consciousness. The precursors who had written the warning into Earth's biology had also written fragments of themselves. Their determination, their defiance, their absolute refusal to let the devourer have the final word. Every human who had ever felt the irrational need to stand when logic said to run, every person who had walked into danger to pull a stranger to safety, every heart that had raged against despair for no logical reason, they were all carrying passengers. Echoes of minds that had perished 100 million years ago, but had refused, even in death, to stop fighting. You asked once why humans are the way we are, I said. Why we fight when we should run. Why we refuse to accept the end. It is because we carry the defiance of everyone who came before us. We are a message sent across deep time, and the message says, do not go quietly. The galaxy rallied. The Vithari gave us their ancient sensor networks. The Corellans committed their war fleets. Even the Sundan, who had fled at the first alarm, returned with technology they had hidden for millennia. Under human coordination, the combined fleet drove into the heart of the Armada and reached the central intelligence that guided it all. The weapon that ended the war was not a bomb. It was a resonance, a frequency the precursors had discovered the devourer could not withstand. In our myths, it was called the word that unmakes. A small team of dreamers, fully immersed in ancestral memory, carried that frequency into the core of the swarm and let it sing. The central intelligence shattered. The Armada went dark. Trillions of drones drifted dead between the stars, like ash after a fire. Weeks later, the Vithari speaker found me standing alone in the conclave chamber. Half the seats were empty now. Some species had not survived. She stood beside me for a long time before she spoke. Will they come again? I thought about lying, but my species has spent 1,000,000 years carrying inherited truth, and I would not be the one to break that chain. The memory suggests yes, not soon, but eventually. Then what do we do? I looked up through the crystal dome at the scarred and burning galaxy beyond, still full of stars, still full of light. We do what we have always done, I said. We write new legends. We make sure someone remembers, and next time, nobody laughs. That night, somewhere on Earth, a child woke from a nightmare about fire in the sky. She did not cry. She clenched her small fists under the blanket and whispered a single word into the darkness. No. The cycle held.